It's a Tuesday morning in April. Raj, 32 years old, software engineer in Seattle, Washington, opens a letter from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. He's been in the country 10 years. He pays taxes. His daughter was born at Swedish Medical Center 3 years ago. She's American. The letter has a number on it, a priority date. And that date tells Raj he'll be eligible for a green card in the year 2159. That's not a typo. That's not a glitch in the system. That is 134 years from now. One letter, one number, and a wait time longer than any human being has ever lived. A wait time so long that Raj, his daughter, his daughter's children, and his daughter's grandchildren will all be dead before his name gets called. And here's the part that'll make you want to throw something. Raj did everything right. He came legally. He got sponsored. He filed every form. He paid every fee. He followed every rule the system asked him to follow. And the system looked at all of that and said, "Great, come back in 134 years." That letter is the U.S. immigration system working exactly as designed, not broken. Not backlogged because someone forgot to hire enough clerks. Designed. And that system decides who gets to stay, who has to leave, and how long you wait, whether you've ever thought about it or not. But here's what nobody tells you. The system that created this mess wasn't built by people who wanted to be unfair. It was built by people who were trying to fix unfairness. And that's the part that'll make your head spin. The U.S. immigration system has one rule that was designed to treat every country on Earth equally. One rule. And that one rule is the reason some people will literally die before their paperwork goes through. How can a rule built for fairness produce one of the most unfair outcomes in American law? That's the question. And the answer, once you see it, is one of those things you can't unsee. To understand how we got here, you need to understand two principles that are fighting each other inside the same system. They've been fighting since 1965, and neither one has won. The first principle is this: every country deserves equal treatment. No nation's citizens should get priority over another's just because of where they were born. That sounds reasonable, right? It sounds like something you'd put on a poster. And in 1965, it was revolutionary, because before that, the United States had a system that was the exact opposite. Let me take you back. In 1924, Congress passed something called the National Origins Act. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It was a racial quota system. It said, in plain language, that the number of immigrants allowed from each country should be based on how many people from that country were already in the United States. Which meant that countries that had sent lots of immigrants in the 1800s, mostly Northern and Western European countries, got huge quotas. And countries that hadn't, like most of Asia, most of Africa, most of Southern and Eastern Europe, got almost nothing. Some got literally zero. The system wasn't hiding what it was doing. A senator at the time said, and I'm paraphrasing, that the goal was to preserve the racial composition of America. That's not subtext. That's text. This lasted for 41 years. Then, in 1965, Congress passed the Immigration and Nationality Act, also known as the Hart-Celler Act. And the whole point of this law was to tear down those racial quotas. No more saying Europeans get in and everyone else waits. The new system would treat every country the same, equal, fair, done. And the way they did it was with one rule. One simple, elegant, seemingly perfect rule. No single country can receive more than 7% of the total immigrant visas issued in any given category per year. 7%. Same for everyone. India gets 7%, Iceland gets 7%, Nigeria gets 7%, Belgium gets 7%, equal slices of the pie. That's wild when you think about it. That's the first principle. Formal equality. Every country treated the same, on paper, in black and white. And in 1965, it felt like justice. The second principle is this: there are only so many visas to go around. Congress sets a cap every year. For family-sponsored preference immigrants, the cap is 226,000. For employment-based immigrants, it's 140,000. That's it. That's the whole pie. And that number hasn't meaningfully changed in decades, even as demand has exploded. So here's where the fight begins. You've got a finite pie, 226,000 family visas, 140,000 employment visas, and you've sliced that pie so every country gets the same maximum share, 7%. That means the per-country cap for any single nation is about 25,620 visas per year across all preference categories. 25,620. Whether you're Iceland, population 380,000, or India, population 1,400,000,000. Same cap. I'm going to be honest. The first time I tried to understand this, I read it 4 times. Not because the words are hard, because the math is so absurd that your brain rejects it. Iceland has roughly 380,000 people. India has roughly 1,400,000,000. India's population is about 3,600 times larger than Iceland's. But in the US immigration system, they get the same maximum allocation, the same slice, of the same pie. Imagine this. Sophia, 26, law student at Boston University, is trying to explain this to her roommate. She grabs a pizza from the counter and cuts it into equal slices. She puts one slice in front of 2 people sitting at the kitchen table. Then she takes an identical slice, walks outside, and sets it in front of 1,400 people standing in the parking lot. Same slice, same pizza. She looks at her roommate and says, "That's the immigration system." Her roommate stares at the pizza, then stares at the crowd, then says, "That can't be right." And Sophia says, "It's not right, but it's the law." That's the paradox. Principle 1 says, treat everyone equally. Principle 2 says there aren't enough visas to go around. Put them together, and you get a system where equal treatment means a person born in Denmark waits months, and a person born in India with the same degree, the same job, the same employer, the same everything, waits 134 years. Both are being treated equally. Both got 7%, and the outcomes are separated by more than a century. Stay with me. The next part is where it actually clicks. So how does the system try to manage this impossible math? It uses 3 tools: preference categories, priority dates, and something called the Visa Bulletin. And once you understand how these 3 things interact, you'll see why the line never moves for some people and barely exists for others. First, preference categories. Not all immigrants are in the same line. The system sorts people into buckets. On the family side, you've got 4 preference categories. F1 is unmarried adult children of US citizens. F2 is spouses and children of permanent residents. F3 is married adult children of US citizens. F4 is brothers and sisters of adult US citizens. On the employment side, you've got 5. EB1 is people with extraordinary ability, think Nobel Prize level talent. EB2 is professionals with advanced degrees. EB3 is skilled workers with at least a bachelor's. EB4 is special immigrants. EB5 is investors. Each category has its own allocation of visas within that total annual cap. Second, priority dates. When you file your immigration petition, you get stamped with a date. That's your priority date. Think of it like taking a number at a deli counter. Your number tells the system when you got in line. You wait until your number gets called. Third, the Visa Bulletin. Every single month, the State Department publishes a document called the Visa Bulletin. This is the scoreboard. It tells you which priority dates are currently being processed for each category, for each country. If your priority date is before the date on the bulletin, your number's been called. You can move forward. If your date is after the bulletin date, you wait. And you check again next month, and the month after that, and the month after that. Now here's where the gears grind. For most countries, the Visa Bulletin dates move forward pretty quickly. A few months here, a year there. If you're from, say, Denmark or Brazil or South Korea, and you're in the EB2 category, your wait might be less than a year. The demand from those countries doesn't come close to filling their 7% slice. But for 4 countries, the math breaks. India, China, Mexico, the Philippines. These 4 countries have so many qualified applicants that their 7% slice runs out almost immediately every fiscal year. And when your slice runs out, the line stops. The Visa Bulletin date for your country just freezes. Or worse, it goes backward. That's called retrogression. Your number actually moves further from being called, not closer. Elena, 41, a nurse in Phoenix, Arizona, born in the Philippines, petitioned for her brother under the F4 category, siblings of U.S. citizens, 12 years ago. Her brother was 35 when she filed. The current Visa Bulletin date for F4 Philippines is still processing priority dates from roughly 19 years ago. So Elena's brother, who's now 47, might get called when he's 54. Maybe, if the line doesn't retrogress. Elena works 12-hour shifts at a hospital in Phoenix, saving people's lives 5 days a week. She's a U.S. citizen. She pays taxes, she votes, and she cannot bring her brother to the same country. And then there's Anders, 29, software developer in Copenhagen, Denmark. He applies for an EB2 visa, same category as Raj, same type of degree, same type of job, same sponsorship process. Anders waits less than a year. Raj waits 134. The only difference between them is the country printed on their birth certificate. That's it. Same qualifications, same employer, same America, separated by 133 years of waiting. Quick pause. Let that sink in before we move on. I'm skipping the technical exceptions here, things like cross-chargeability, Schedule A, and recapture of unused visas, because they don't change the picture. They're band-aids on a structural fracture. The core problem isn't processing speed. It isn't bureaucratic inefficiency. It's arithmetic. You cannot fit 1,400,000,000 people's demand through a hole designed for 380,000 people's demand and call it fair. The numbers don't work. They were never going to work. And this is where the paradox bites. The system doesn't resolve the conflict between its 2 principles. It just hides it. On paper, every country is treated equally. 7%. Done. Fair. But in practice, equal treatment of unequal demand produces wildly unequal outcomes. And the people caught in that gap aren't abstractions. They're engineers, nurses, teachers, parents, children. They're people who followed every rule and got told to wait longer than a human lifespan. David Bier, at the Cato Institute, ran the numbers in 2018 and again in 2023. His research estimated that approximately 424,000 employment-based applicants will die waiting for a green card they already qualified for. Over 90% of them are Indian nationals. Let me say that again. 424,000 people will die in the line for a visa they were already approved for. Not because they did something wrong, not because they were rejected, because the math doesn't have room for them. This part still blows my mind. The system isn't broken. That's the thing people get wrong. A broken system would be easier to fix. You'd find the broken piece and replace it. This system is functioning exactly as the law says it should function. The per-country cap is doing precisely what Congress designed it to do in 1965. The problem isn't a bug. The problem is that the design itself contains a contradiction that was invisible when it was written and is now mathematically catastrophic. In 1965, immigration from India to the United States was tiny. The 7% cap didn't matter because demand was nowhere near the limit. But over 6 decades, the world changed. India became a global tech powerhouse. Hundreds of thousands of Indian professionals came to the US on H-1B visas, legally, invited by American companies who needed their skills. They got in the employment-based green card line, And the line grew and grew, and the cap stayed the same. 140,000 employment-based visas total. 25,620 per country maximum, for a backlog that now contains 1.1 million Indian applicants and their families. The math was never going to work. There's something structurally absurd about a system that treats a country of 1.4 billion people and a country of 380,000 people as if they generate the same demand. It's not malicious. It might not even be intentional anymore. But it is absurd, and it has real consequences for real people. So what does this mean in practice? It means three things most people get wrong. First, the long wait has nothing to do with immigrants trying to cut the line or game the system. Every single person in that 11.6 million case backlog filed paperwork, paid fees, and followed the legal process. The line is long because the pipe is narrow, not because the people are doing something wrong. Second, speeding up processing doesn't fix this. If USCIS could process every application instantly, overnight, with perfect efficiency, the wait times would barely change. Because the bottleneck isn't processing speed. It's the annual cap, the number of visas available per year per country. You could have the fastest clerk in the world, and Raj would still wait 134 years. Because there are only 25,620 slots per year, and over 1 million people in line ahead of him from the same country. Third, the system doesn't just affect immigrants. It affects American employers who can't retain talent. It affects American citizens who can't bring their siblings or parents to the same country. It affects American-born children who grow up watching their parents live in legal limbo for decades. Your neighbor, 52, retired electrician in Tampa, Florida, whose daughter-in-law has been waiting 11 years for her green card. That's this system. Your coworker whose H-1B visa ties him to one employer because switching jobs could reset his priority date and add another decade to his wait. That's this system. Every state and every fact pattern is different. What you just learned is the framework, not the answer. But the framework matters, because you can't evaluate any immigration debate, any headline, any politician's promise about fixing immigration, unless you understand the machine underneath. There's a whole world of immigration law I'm not touching today. Asylum, refugees, DACA, temporary protected status. Each one could be its own 20-minute video. But the per-country cap system is the engine that drives the backlog. And if you understand this, you understand why the line exists and why it doesn't move. If you're still here, you're already ahead of 90% of people who've ever tried to learn this. Here's what you should take away. 1. The per-country cap of 7% is the single gear that creates decade-long and century-long wait times. It was designed for fairness. It produces the opposite. 2. The country on your birth certificate, not your skills, not your education, not your years of following the rules, is the single biggest factor in how long you wait. 2 identical people with 2 identical applications can be separated by over 100 years of waiting based on one line in their paperwork. 3. The backlog of 11.6 million cases isn't a sign that the system is broken. It's a sign that the system is working exactly as written, and what's written contains a mathematical contradiction that was invisible in 1965 and is now undeniable. The immigration system promises equal treatment. It delivers unequal outcomes. And the gap between the promise and the outcome is measured in human lives. Most people will never learn how this works. They'll hear immigration and think of a border. They'll hear backlog and think someone's being lazy. They won't know about the per-country cap. They won't know about the Visa Bulletin. They won't know that 424,000 people are estimated to die in a line they were already approved to stand in. That's exactly why I made this video. Because the first step to fixing something is understanding the machine. And now you understand the machine. This is education, not legal advice. If you face a real situation, talk to a licensed attorney in your state. Remember Raj? 32. Software engineer, Seattle. His daughter's 3. American citizen. The letter said 2,159. By then, his daughter will be 136 years old. She won't be alive. Her children won't be alive. And somewhere in a filing cabinet in a government building, Raj's priority date will still be waiting. That's the system, and it's running right now.